Board of Education future issues are, next meetings are in April 2nd. Which will be before the election, and April 16th following the election, and that'll also be a time for us to reorganize. So hopefully everybody's got that on their calendar. We'll move to old business. Assessment update. Mr. Hounson is going to here to talk to us about the plethora of assessments about to fall upon our students in April, I'm assuming.
So just a short update about just a couple of small changes to the assessment system going on. No, it's not unusual to come and kind of update about changes that Missouri has made in assessments. And this year is probably one of the larger changes as we bite off some new stuff. So I wanted to give you an update about what that will look like and things the district is doing to prepare for that coming up. First, just a reminder about just what the assessments are. Missouri's grade level assessments. Students in grades 3 through 8 will take a math test and an English language arts test. In addition to that, kids in grades 5 and 8 will also take a science test. So we'll spend quite a bit of time here talking about the grade level assessments in just a moment, but that's the kids that we're talking about and the assessments. We'll continue with end of course assessments as we have been. The starred subjects of Algebra 1, Biology, English 2, and Government, those are the 4 that we as a district are required to make sure all kids get through before they graduate. That's an accountability measure on us, not on the students, so they won't not graduate if they don't get it, but that would be an accountability effect on us as a district. So we make sure all kids get through all 4 of those, which they do. We'll talk a little bit about changes in giving the ACT that's new this year, a little bit about the ASVAB, and then the access test for ELL students. We'll finish with a little bit about that. Primarily, we're going to be talking about the grade level assessments. Some changes here. First of all, the major change, obviously, is we're moving away from a pencil and paper administration to a fully online administration. And I'm going to talk a lot tonight about what that's meant for us for planning, for preparation, and some of the things we're doing. But that's certainly been something that we spent a lot of time with. I had spoken with you earlier on the fixed form and adaptive testing. I mentioned to you earlier this test was originally designed, since it's given on computer, to react to how students are doing, to move up in difficulty or down. That was not ready for this year. The state was not able to get that implemented. So we are giving a fixed form test for this year only. The plan is still that will be ready beginning next year, which they say is not a problem at all. They were very close this year but didn't want to rush it. So a fixed form test simply means the questions are predetermined. Not all kids will have the same version, but when a kid starts a version, the questions are set. So it will not be adaptive. That's coming. New this year also is the test is aligned with the Missouri Learning Standards, which went into effect this year. So this is the first test that will be given. Now, the Missouri, as I've talked with you before about our transition to Missouri Learning Standards, I would tell you we're still in a transition phase. You simply can't drop new standards in and because things move around and you have to make sure kids get what they want. So we're still in a transition. They are very rigorous. On this test, we will find that kids are asked to do more complex things than they were asked to do on the previous version of the MAP test. It's just a fact. The level of questions they're going to be asked to answer has gone up. Okay. New in grades 5 and 8, performance tasks and classroom activities. This is a whole new thing for us. In grades 5 and 8, English, math, science, kids will have teachers as part of the assessment program. They will be teaching lessons in class. They have pre-scripted lessons to teach kids, and they have all of the things that need to be discussed, and they'll ask kids questions, and they'll have cues about if they don't answer this way, give them these cues, make sure these things are covered. So kids will have a lesson taught in class. They will then follow up that lesson with an additional online assessment above and beyond the regular English and math online assessment. But this online assessment will be in relation to the lesson that was taught in class. Again, that's grades 5 and grades 8. That's considered a performance task. we're going to look here. I've got a 5th grade son who's not real pleased with the testing plan that I'm going to show you tonight for what it means for grades 5 and 8.
Yeah, I've heard, yeah.
But there are additional things there for those 2 grades. That's part of our accountability plan with the federal government, that we at least test grade spans, give a full version of the test. So we'll talk about that. But that is new. That's nothing we've ever done before, so that's another learning curve for us. This test does have enhanced technology item types. So beyond, maybe when you think computerized tests, you're thinking multiple choice and constructed response. All of those are there. We'll also have constructed item types where we're dragging things into 2 separate boxes and classifying them in some way. We'll have text that we can click within the text with hot links to select passages within the text to answer the question that's there. It's a different way of answering questions. And that's been part of our preparation plan. We knew these item types were going to be in here. That's been clear. So part of our preparation plan has been getting kids used to answering different types of questions so that the structure of the test would not be a detriment to them showing what they really know on the content. So we'll take a look at that a little bit. Because it's online, the results will get back to us much quicker. When we close our testing window, which our testing window will close around the first week of May, we will receive results in 15 days. So we should have results. We may not have them by the last day of school. We will have them prior to summer school starting, at least in that break. At that time, we'll be sending out messages that parents can come pick up their test results. We won't hold on to those until next school year. We'll make those available to parents right away.
So there'll be no packing up of the tests, mailing the
There's
test?
no more packing up tests, mailing it.
Keeping them under lock and key?
No more going down to the counselor's office and getting your books
Yeah.
in the morning and then returning them at night. So, now the online administration, I should mention it, the online administration is new for this grade level test. It's not new for the district. The end of course tests have been online for the last few years. So it's not completely foreign world, but there are some things that are different that I'll show you tonight that's different than end of course, but at least we're not starting from scratch. One other change, MAP A students, before, if a student's IEP indicated that they would take the MAP A instead of the regular MAP, they did that. That's still in place, but even the MAP A now has become an online assessment called Dynamic Learning Maps, new this year. So we're going through that for the first time as well.
Is that a timed test?
No, no. And the Dynamic Learning Maps it's a completely different platform and setup. It's not even the same group that's doing this assessment, so it's a completely different learning situation. So Stacy Reed and I have worked through that. We started that last year. We're finishing that up this year. So again, just more change a little bit there. Now, some things that this made us consider, just going through and trying to think of the differences that online testing versus pencil and paper makes for us. Just trying to think of all the things that we think we should probably think of to have these details in place. It certainly eases some things, as Mrs. Cavender mentioned, the shipping of books and sealing and making sure that it's all there, that's all gone. Once they hit submit, that's the end of the process, and it simplifies things.
No one can comment on the test.
One good thing I will tell you, as we've done some online assessment work here in the district outside of the MAP test, one of the things we did is after we did some of these, we spent some time talking to kids and asked them, what did you think of this? Compare this to pencil. If we had done this test on pencil and paper versus on the devices that we had you do it today, give us your thoughts. And overwhelmingly, at least for now, they prefer to take the assessments online over pencil and paper. They liked using the computers. They like having it there in front of them. It felt more natural to them. They gave us some really good hints about things that we weren't doing real well with online assessments that we have fixed. For instance, we will buy mice to use with some of our laptops that we use. The functioning of the pads wasn't as comfortable as they would like. I'm going to talk about devices here, but their preference of devices, some of the things they told us about the different devices we tested, led us to select the ones that we did and stay away from some of the others that had some glitches and ones that they thought were harder to use. So they at least prefer online testing. So that's a good step. That's a good start anyway. At least we're in a plus there. Parent communication, we always try to communicate with parents, but communicating these changes we think is important this year. All the buildings have received a common letter that describes the new online testing and gives parents some links that they can go to take a look at what the new tests look like, which we are going to look at tonight here before this is over. So we want to make sure parents are aware of this. We try to give some tips about being successful, and it's all about just having kids relax, don't get too stressed out, do their best, and that's it. And, you know, of course, sleep, breakfast, all those things are in the letter. I know when I was at parent-teacher conferences last night at the middle school, my son came home with one, and elementaries maybe a little bit later. I'm not sure if they handed theirs out now. Their testing is a little bit later, and I'll show you some schedule. But everyone will receive that. We obviously want to communicate with students, which we've been doing all along, so that they're aware of what the MAP testing is going to be like, so that they're comfortable when they step in. So we've done a lot of things with getting kids ready. And also I put district communication. This year, more so than in past years, I want to make sure that every question that we have, that every building is talking to me and I'm talking to every building and they're talking to each other. Every step along the way, we want to do this together. We know that we're going to learn some lessons with this. We know everything that we plan, we may not think of, but we want to make sure that when one person learns something and discovers a better way to do things, that we all learn it. So we've really stressed district communication this year and really wanting to make sure we're all on the same page. I don't want to say we're bad at that, but we had all done the pencil and paper testing before. We want to make sure we're all getting this. One good thing is that across the state, a lot of schools are preparing for this, and a lot of schools are sharing questions. There's a group of test coordinators here in the area that I communicate with pretty regularly and share with them what we're doing and steal ideas about what they're doing. So everyone is feeling just a little bit on edge about are we covering all of our bases here. So we're all in the same boat there, and we share a lot of information, which is good. I'll talk about national trends and the use of results. The national trends that we've seen as states have adopted these new tests. As I mentioned, these are a little more complex. What they're asking of kids is a little bit different. The department is concerned about what may happen when test results come back across the state and we see a decline in performance. And I'm not being a pessimist, but the results when they come back, we have no idea where we'll be. We view this very much as a baseline year to get started. To compare this to past tests, I'm not sure is fair because it's different standards that they're testing. It's a different level of requirement for proficiency. So I don't want to stand up here and promise that we're going to score perfect. I'm not saying we're going to score bad. Our kids and teachers have worked very hard, but it's an unknown that we're stepping into a little bit when we get the results. Speaking of results, the format that we'll get them back in and the information that we'll get from them will also be new. From what I'm understanding, the information will be restructured a different way, so we're curious as to what we get. They're supposed to be much more detailed than they have in the past and supposed to allow us to really drill down to some specific standards even more than we were on the previous test. So we want to use those results. We want parents to know how their kids are doing. The results for us are more an evaluation of our program and things that we can do to get better. We don't use those so much to evaluate individual kids. It's an overall programmatic review of how well are we doing to prepare kids for what's going to be asked for them. So we're interested to get those and we'll be looking at how we can use those when we return with teachers next school year. So, preparation. As I mentioned here, identifying devices. We are not going to test, and I hope I don't offend any Apple people, we're not testing on iPads. That was one thing that students said that they were difficult to use, especially when the keyboard would come up and they're trying to type and answer the question at the same time. They were also a little glitchy on some of the things that we did. Not the same platform, but we'll be testing on as many desktop devices as we can. The middle school and junior high have labs. Wyman Elementary has a lab. Obviously, Mark Twain and Truman do not. So anytime we're not testing on desktops, we'll be testing on the largest laptops that we have, which we have 15-inch screens in the district, real nice large laptops. So we'll be using those two devices are primarily what we will be testing on in all the buildings. Ginger and her team have done a lot. The demands to set up the testing, the backbone of this testing system on our network has not been a small thing. It's fairly complex in getting it all to work correctly, and obviously it's pretty high stakes for us that we need it to work. We don't need the system crashing as we're trying to submit a couple thousand tests. So they have done a lot of good work making sure everything works, and we're very comfortable with where we are. I think we're lucky here with the network we have. I think we may avoid some situations that other school districts may suffer with just a little bit. So thankful for what we have. Let's look at scheduling, and Nancy, if you could click on that link. Now this has created some interesting scheduling issues. And I don't know if all of that is on there. As you look across the top, I mentioned that 5th grade is a little more heavily tested. Each line there, go back to the name, Nancy, and we'll scroll across. Each line going across, you can see the name of a 5th grade teacher. As you go to each column, you can see the columns across the top. That's an individual testing session that has been scheduled for that class. To get through the English, math, and science. So Nancy, if you can scroll over and they can see how far that goes across, right to left there. Keep going across. So down to column K, starting at column B after the name. B through K are individual testing sessions for 5th grade students.
Wow.
One of the things the online versus pencil and paper testing did is we can only test with the number of devices we have available. We can't test every 5th grader at the same time like we did with pencil and paper, each in their individual classrooms. We simply don't have that number of devices, and the load it would put on the network would be too much. So we test fewer kids at a time, which means we have to schedule more sessions throughout the testing window, which means the testing gets drawn out in the building. Even though it's similar to the time kids have tested before, the demands on the building are greater because of how many sessions we need. Now, if you contrast that, Nancy, if you'll scroll down, the 6th and 7th grade schedules are there. So the 6th grade schedule has 2 columns, the 7th grade schedule has 2 columns, 1 English, 1 math. This is why my 5th grade son was not so pleased to learn about map testing this year.
Just tell him to be a 6th grader next year.
I told him next year you'll be happy and you'll be making fun of your sister in a couple of years.
So what's the total number of hours in the?
I've got that on a slide here. It's not bad for some and a little overwhelming for others. So, thank you, Nancy, if you close that. Obviously, teacher training is different. We still have all of the security training. It's different than it was before. Before, we were training a lot about not having test booklets in your room, not taking them home, making sure we're not reading through the test booklets. We don't, that's not as much of an issue, but it's still getting into the system and trying to look at questions. It's making sure that kids aren't looking off each other's computers. It's making sure the room is set up. We still have all of the required DESE training. We still submit quality assurance documents in which we observe testing sessions within the district and let DESE know what's going on. We are eligible to have DESE test investigators is the wrong word. Test examiners come down and view our testing to make sure we're meeting all those. So we take that seriously. I've trained all the school testing coordinators, and they have then in turn gone into the buildings to train the teachers. So we do all of that. On the other side, teachers need to know about the testing platform and how this test works and what it's going to look like and how it's going to function, because they are the proctors that will be in the rooms with kids when they're testing. So they need to be aware of what it looks like. They also obviously need to know so that they can help students know what it's going to look like. So if you'll indulge me here for a second, I am going to show you what this test looks like and how it functions. I'm going to just step over here and drive for a moment.
You're not going to have to take the test, though.
That's legal though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're not breaking any rules. The state of Missouri, and this was in the letter that we sent home to parents, the state of Missouri has created a website around map testing where kids, teachers, parents can get in and look at the test, look at the platform, see how it works. I wanted to show you that tonight. I thought you might be interested to see what this looks like. This website was in the letter that we sent home, so all parents have access to this. I would encourage them to get on with their kids and look at it and just go through it. Teachers will be going through this with students. Kids will be familiar with this by the time the test comes around. This will not be strange. So as we go in here, I'm going to, you see we have all subject areas. I'm going to select the English Language Arts practice items. Those are broken into grade-specific practice tests. We'll take a look at grade 7.
I was hoping for 3.
So when
I was kind of lobbying
Security
for that
got you.
too, Jane.
teachers and when anyone gets in here, if you look up there in the blue box, your username and password is given to you. They still make you enter it for some reason.
Part of the training.
Part of the training. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. So we will sign in. You'll see we're in grade 7 ELA practice. Okay, this is to make sure that your screen's working okay. You should see 3 gray circles. So the first thing that teachers are going to take kids through, these first few screens are about the different tools and buttons on the test so that they know what they are and they're comfortable when they get there and they know how the platform functions. So we're going to move through here. I'll show you the tools as we just take a look at a couple questions. So lots of information about tools, and we're going to begin the test here. So this is the actual platform. This is what it will look like when kids get on the computers to take the map test. This is it. As you see, can you hold that just for a second? Over here on the left is a reading selection, which kids will scroll down, and it's larger there than the screen. And then on the right, for this one, it asks us to select the sentences that support the inference that the area is in danger of losing its moose population. Select all the sentences that apply. So what kids will be asked to do is to go in here, click on a sentence that supports that conclusion, select all of them. There's not just one, so they'll have to make a decision on each sentence as to whether it supports that conclusion or not. Select the ones that do, leave the ones that don't blank. I mentioned some of the tools across the top. Some of the tools kids will have. This is a highlighter that they can go in, and as they read, if they see important points, then they can highlight certain. This doesn't work as well without a mouse. I'm glad that we're using.
I can see this would
mice
be
here.
really tough to do on an iPad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So they can go all throughout here, highlight different portions that they want to look at. We'll turn the highlighter off. If they want to make it bigger, there's a magnifying glass. They can make it a little bigger. Or, if they want, they can make it a lot bigger.
Now you're talking.
Yeah. I can see it now.
This looks like Mr. Henshaw's phone when you pick it up. But it's font size now, so turn that off. We have sticky notes, which some of these tools I really see benefit. You know, here if they want, they can put a sticky note and I guess write, you know, notes to themselves of things they want to remember, and they can move the sticky note around as they're reading. And then this is pretty neat here, a line guide that they can grab onto. So on longer reading selections, they can drag the line guide down to make sure that they get through it all. And this is a reading aid for a lot of kids to help them get through the text. So that is there. So on this one, we click some hot links and move through. Just show you a couple different questions. This is a standard multiple choice question. On multiple choice questions, we have the ability to organize their thinking, to go through and eliminate some choices if they want, again, just to help them picture and maybe work through a solution. A lot of the questions will ask them to mark all the right answers. So it's not a straight multiple choice where it's just one answer, select all that apply. So this can be used to kind of go through and eliminate the ones just to focus in on the ones you're still considering. So that tool is there.
It's kind of nice.
Here we have a traditional one that you might expect. It's just a constructed response. Here they're asking kids use key evidence from the text, which is one of the Missouri learning standards that is stressed, is to read a text, then use evidence from the text to support your position. And here they're asked to enter text in.
So they got
Well,
to
this
type
is
it.
all computer graded,
Yes, this is all computer graded.
so even the constructed responses.
Yes, yes. Now, I think some of the longer writing stuff, Keith, if I remember right, maybe there's a human grading portion to parts of that.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're, I guess, looking to see as part of one of the things we'll learn is how much keyboarding skills the youngest students need. DESE has told us that for 3rd and 4th graders, the keyboarding demands are very low. Without having taken the test, I don't know how to interpret that if low in my mind is the same as low in their mind. So after we do this once, if we see a need, we may be looking for some assistance in getting kids keyboarding. And not just for the test, but
It's a lot.
younger and younger keyboarding has started. When I was in school, we started typing in high school. Obviously, we don't start that. We don't wait till then now. So.
These kids type on their phones all the time, too.
Right. So we may need to look at something like that. The last question type I want to show you here is an audio question. In the English language arts portion of the test, there are audio questions where they will answer questions based on what they hear. So one of the things that we've done is obviously order lots of headphones to wear. And every kid takes English. Every student will have an audio portion. So we've ordered a lot. We are more than fine if kids wish to bring in their own earbuds. If they're comfortable using those, they can bring in their own. It doesn't have to be a school-issued one, but every kid will need one during testing. So let's see if our sound works here. You can get an idea what this is like.
In the following presentation, you will learn about archaeologists. Listen to the presentation and then answer the questions that follow. Archaeologists are scientists who study the objects called artifacts that people have left behind, the sites where these are found, and the landscapes in which the site existed. These artifacts give us clues about how people lived their lives at earlier times.
So they'll go through, I think that was about a 1.5-minute selection, I think it was on the timer. And then they'll answer 2 or 3 questions about that same listening. We do have a pause feature here, which I've put up. If a class needs to take a break between sessions or a student needs to use the restroom or something, we can pause the test. It shuts it down for a while. As long as we come back within 20 minutes, the student can just resume from where they left off. Now, one other thing, if a student wants to move through and answer all the questions that they're more comfortable with, if they get to one that they don't know, there's a flag feature at the bottom. We can flag this question. When we get to the end, let's go down to question 29. We'll just answer one here. When we get to the end and we want to finish, we will see that we have a question flagged here, and it will call the student's attention that they can go back and spend some more time on that question. So before they hit end the test, they will be taken to the screen. All these ones that have gray boxes, that means we've answered something on that question. So this is just a check for the student to make sure that they've answered all the questions. They can look at the flag, move back to ones that they want to spend more time with, and then they can end their test.
Cool.
So I was just going to look at that one. If you want to get on, I'll give you the website. You can look at the math and science questions that are there as well. Our last CSD day that we had, this is one of the things that we worked on teachers with, is to make sure they were aware of what resources were out there that they could use with kids. Again, we don't want students being uneasy about the environment they're in, uneasy with the tool that's in front of them. We want that to be standard, for that to be comfortable, so that what determines their success is their ability to answer the content questions, not their ability to manipulate the tools or lack thereof. So the last two, as far as preparation, common assessments and changing standards. I mentioned you before, we moved all of our common assessments onto an online platform this year and rewrote them to be in line with the Missouri learning standards. That was one of the big tasks that we've taken on this year during CSD days. So preparation for this, it's really just preparation for teaching kids the standards that are expected at their grade level. I would never want to, we don't teach to a test. We teach to teach the standards that are expected for 3rd and 4th, 5th graders in the state of Missouri. And if we do that well, the test takes care of itself. So those are the things that we've bitten off. However, we don't want kids walking into something that they've never seen before. So
Right.
moving to the online common assessments with the enhanced technology item types, we felt like that was important to get kids used to that setting. So that's one of the things that we've done. Testing by the numbers, question about the time that's here. In grades 3, 4, 6, and 7, they estimate that each test will be about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Again, one for math, one for English language arts. These are not timed tests, so students will have as much time as they need to finish.
Oh, good.
With all of the sessions in grades 5 and 8, which includes additional math and English sections and the science sections, 5 and 8 will be testing approximately 9 hours worth of time. I would say that's more than the traditional pencil and paper. I would say the other grades are actually just maybe a tad shorter than what we had been doing in the past. So it's pluses and minuses here. Overall, for all of the sessions and all of our kids, it's almost 8,500 testing sessions that we have to schedule and make sure we have a place for everyone and technology set up for. So the scheduling part, we're still in the middle of, but it's been new and different. It's been a little more challenging than with the pencil and paper part. I was going to move on to end of course assessments unless you have other questions about these grade level assessments. Yes, ma'am.
Our special needs students, will they also be doing this on the computer?
Yes, we still have the ability to set accommodations for IEP students. We can still test in small groups. There was to be, again, one of those things that was supposed to be ready this year and wasn't, was a text-to-speech feature. One of our primary assessments is oral reading in math and science to IEP kids. We can still do that. It'll just be humans reading off the screen. There was to be a text-to-speech feature, but that's not completely ready yet either. So, but yes, all those accommodations are still there.
Great, thank you.
Makeups could go a little bit quicker too, you know, if you have kids absent, because you could take one lab and you could have different grade levels.
You could
couldn't
have kids taking different tests right there together with their usernames and passwords.
This will be interesting because, you know, in the past, we used to just totally shut down the building. I mean, PE stopped, everything stopped, everyone's day was totally different. And I think sometimes that causes anxiety. In this way, it's almost like you're going to have more of a normal day. There's just going to be one group that's going to be in the lab taking.
We hope.
I don't-
We'll
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
So functionally, what this will look like, every test session, the students will have a test ticket. It'll have their name on it and a password. The password links to one of the tests. So they're not going to select a test. They'll type in a password. It will take them there. So the smaller tested groups will have about 4 to 6 tickets. The English session is actually 2 sessions, but we're putting it together. But the 5th graders will have 10 to 12 tickets that they'll need to type in throughout the testing time. So
And absent, if the child's absent, will they give those at a later date or let them do them as they can?
sure, we'll have makeups just like we always have. The makeups of the regular test we can handle fairly easily. It's just finding a computer and a person
Right.
to do it. We can do that. The part that we're a little concerned about, the classroom teaching sessions that I mentioned, if a student misses one of those, that's a much harder thing to make up and get them that lesson prior to taking that part of the test. So that's going to challenge us
I
to
guess you can't
organize that.
Video the lesson.
I don't think, no, because the teachers to react, it has a script to react based on the answers the student's giving them to the questions. And so you would need the ability to get them the information they need. So,
Contingency plans for unexpected events such as power outages. and-
the system is actually set up. Now, a power outage may cause problems, but it's not sending live signals all the time. It's storing them on a local server, banking them, and then periodically sending them out. I've asked the question about electrical outages. I know the answer I got seemed like it made sense and would work, but I don't remember what it was. But there's something built into the system to where it stores, backs itself up all the time, so when it does come back on, you won't have lost any of the information that's there.
But you have some flexibility in your schedule to test more days if you need to.
Yes, we set our window. The buildings gave me their building schedules, and I padded it at the end just in case. So if we do end earlier, I can make a call, shut the window down. That will start our clock for getting our results back, and we could get them back a little bit quicker.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the grade level? Okay. The rest of this is much like it has been in the past, end of course assessments. As we said, it's online as it has been. The one change, again, these are aligned to the new Missouri Learning Standards. There's still multiple choice and performance events the same as they have been. This is not the same platform as the grade level test. This is the same platform that we've been testing on the last several years. We do get the results back in 5 business days. These are included on the students' end of the year grades on their grade card, just as they always have been. Scheduling, we schedule high school and junior high scheduled together on tests that they give together, like Algebra 1, geometry, biology. Other than that, buildings have the ability to set their own schedules, and that's toward for end of course is a little bit later. It's the last of April, beginning of May. Same teacher training as the grade level test, same security statements. I train the school test coordinators, they train the teachers. One new thing is now on end of course assessments, there are full practice tests where you get results back and can see how kids are doing. That's one thing about what I showed you on the grade level assessment. There are no answer keys to that. Teachers don't have answer keys. There's no way to tell how students are doing, and it won't give you any results at the end. So it's purely practice. That's why we've encouraged teachers to do it as full class presentations on a smart board as opposed to just kids sitting at a computer, really talk through them. So, but new practice tests on end of course. ACT and ASVABs, you know, for the first time this year, Missouri is providing all high school juniors with an ACT administration. We'll be doing that at Rolla High School. We'll be doing that on the same day as the ASVAB test, which is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery test. Sophomores will take the ASVAB. And the common testing date that we'll be doing that is Tuesday, April 28th. ACT set the date. We moved ASVAB onto the same date, primarily for organizational purposes and not to blow up too many days. So that's an additional testing that's going on this year at the high school. In the past, obviously kids elected to take the ACTs. This is the first time we'll have our entire junior class taking it. So we think that's a good thing.
Remind me about what percentage had taken the ACT in the past.
If I remember right, we were between 60 and 70. I think about 2/3 is where we usually landed. Finally, just to mention, we have finished up one portion of testing, the Access for ELLs, which measures ELL students in speaking, listening, reading, and writing. We tested 126 students in the district. You might note 107 of that 126 was at the elementary, so that is very much where our ELL population is. But we'll get those results back. Those take a little longer over the summer, and that measures students' progress toward English language acquisition skills. So just one more assessment that goes on. So questions, I will say this, you know, I mentioned earlier about kids. What we want of kids is to relax. We want them to try their best. We want them to feel comfortable. We don't want this to be a stressful situation. We're not putting undue pressure on them. It is something that all kids in Missouri have to do, so if we have to do it, we might as well do as well as we can and give the best effort we can. But that's all we would ask. In the letter are some tips about getting kids ready. We do serve breakfast at every building. All kids can come down and eat. We want a good night's sleep the night before, and if we can, scheduling doctor's appointments and any other appointments away from your students' MAP testing, just so they can do it with the rest of their classmates and not have to fight the makeups. Anytime we can do that, we greatly appreciate it.
So the testing schedule's been given to parents, so they know that.
Testing schedule is going home with students from the buildings. As soon as we return from spring break, the middle school will be starting. Their testing load is much greater than some of the other buildings. The elementaries generally will start the third week of April, so they'll have a couple additional weeks before they start.
It's an amazing project. You stay
Boy, it
ready to
is.
do it.
Good times.
Some schools
Thanks, Craig.
kick off in-
Okay.
Thank
Well
you.
done, thank you.